Hi everyone. Obviously a big part of Poems from a Runaway is my journey going through the care system. So I thought I'd talk about that really, because I guess there's a lot of people that haven't been through the care system and might want to know what it's like to live in care as a young person. And the kind of things that you feel going through the care system, which maybe a lot of people don't think about. And maybe even when you're in care at the time, you don't think about other people might see why you make the choices you make, but you don't always see that yourself when you're going through it. I first went into care about 10 or 11 years old, and my first set of foster parents were in a place called Tamworth. I think they were called Brian and Jean, and they were a Christian couple. Lived in a place called Glasgow, Tamworth. They were really nice to me, they was. I think they had their own difficulties maybe at the time, but which I kind of saw at the end of my stay there. But after about 6 weeks, which it was only supposed to be a respite foster home anyway, and for those that don't know, respite means short term. So after about 6 weeks, we went back home. We thought, well, we'll make another go of it. As I explained in the book, not too long after that, things kind of become at home how they were before, and we was all finding it a little bit difficult basically. So then I went into foster care again, because I think I might have been running away again once I got back home. And social services said, we can't find you a set of long-term foster parents so soon, but what we'll do is we'll put you with another set of respite foster parents until we can find you somewhere long-term, maybe somewhere closer to home, so you're not estranged from your family, you know. So I stayed with a couple called Hazel and Gordon in Chasetown in Burntwood in Staffordshire. They were absolutely brilliant, just legends. I've just got ultimate love and respect for them. And I remember their son Jason, although because I've met so many people since all this time, I can't even remember his face, which I feel a bit bad about, but I remember him, his sound. And Hazel and Gordon, I'll never forget them, because they're just beautiful spirits, and it was a totally different experience from me going from a home where I kind of, you know, I was just a kid doing my thing, and I wasn't, you know, we didn't really do a lot as a family really, although there was times where we did, but I won't go into that. But so just being took out with them when they were doing their things, when they went out to, they used to go out to a working men's club twice a week, and we never did anything like that at home. So, you know, meeting people every week, it was brilliant. I loved it. Everyone knew I was a foster kid, but they just took me in as one of their own. So while I'm living with Hazel and Gordon, I'm kind of really enjoying it there. I'm kind of really at home. They've made me feel at home when I first got there, even though they said help yourself to food and things like that. It took me a while too, because you kind of feel at first you're in a stranger's home and you don't want to help yourself to all this stuff, because you feel like you're invading this home, I guess, in a way. It's an odd feeling when you first go into care. And then because social services had been looking for a long-term set of foster parents, they found me somewhere that actually only give me 1 day's notice. They hadn't told me before, they hadn't asked me if I wanted to meet them or anything, and social services had rang my foster parents, and then I got home from school and my foster parents said, sorry Ben, we didn't know until today, but you're moving tomorrow to a new foster home. And I wasn't really gutted about it then. I'm more gutted about it now, but I think by then I was already used to knowing that these social workers were going to make decisions about my life, and it was kind of out of my control really. So I moved to another foster home closer to my mum's in the same town where I grew up for most of my childhood. And really nice foster parents, they were lovely. They had their own kids, and they was all quite young. And I just remember the feeling about that was, even though I was a content kid, always keeping busy and active, I remember feeling, because I was the only foster kid, I just felt a bit out the loop really. a bit like I was dropped off on someone's doorstep. I remember I say in my book, in the way I write the poems, I felt a bit like a dog dropped off on someone's doorstep. So maybe that's something to think about with those working with young people in care. If I felt like that in that situation, then there's whenever young people are going through that they might feel similar, you know. So things got a bit rocky there, and that's when I started running away again. I hadn't actually run away from any of my previous foster parents before this, and it wasn't because of any wrongdoing from my foster parents, because they were as supportive as they can be, and you had to understand they were taking on a foster kid with a mashed up thought process, because confused childhood, and they've also got their own kids, and life isn't easy, is it? So fair play to them. But I was also running away, which made things really difficult for them. And still they never said that they wanted me to leave or anything. But as I explain in the stories in my book, I end up in London, then I one day on a train. So I'll go through all my times in London, which I'm sure you'll hear about on some more podcasts or in the book. Well, my first part of London. And when I first ran away, I was living in East London, in Whitechapel, on the streets amongst prostitutes, drug addicts, all the street homeless. I was took under the wing of another runaway who was 13, a girl called Joanne. And when I got caught at first, the police and the social worker said, "Do you want to go back home?" And the only reason I didn't want to go back was because I felt guilty, and I felt a bit like I didn't want to face up to things. I think I bottled facing up to it. I just felt guilty. I just didn't feel like I could be there after stealing some money from them to run away. So I ended up going into a children's home. I remember the social worker saying to me, "Oh, it's not like a borstal or a prison. Not all the kids are there because they've done something wrong, even though there might be one or two that are there because they're on bail." He said, "You've got nothing to worry about. I'm sure you'll enjoy it being a young kid. They're all around the same age as you, and you might have a laugh there, and the staff are really nice." And that was mainly because there wasn't any foster parents available. So I got to the children's home in Cannock, Old Penkridge Road. It's not there anymore. Yeah, so I got to the children's home, and I enjoyed it there. At times I was really lucky. We was a lot better off than we was when we was at home. You know, it was the first time in my life I'd really had pocket money and things like that, because I think I was probably too young at first to have pocket money. I think I did it with my foster parents. I think they gave me some, I just can't remember. But I think I remember it more being in the children's home, because we used to have to do our rooms and do our beds and everything on a Saturday. We'd go down to the town centre and get a pack of fags. But we'd feel really lucky, because they used to take us out on activities and things like bowling. And we used to be able to go to bowling, and we went to the cinema if we want to. So we'd have an activity day once a week. Kids like me, you're single moms and never had that money to do what you want to do, and it was brilliant. You felt a bit spoilt in a way. I guess we was a bit spoilt in the children's homes, not in a bad way, but we felt a bit spoilt because we finally had them things. We had money to spend on clothes, man. That was unheard of for a lot of kids, and it's still the same today, innit? You know, having that money to go and buy yourself a pair of trainers or something. Kids are saying they're hard up. They got £90 to wear a pair of trainers, but we never had that. We had to make do with Mercury, didn't we? If we ever had anything else, it was a once in a lifetime opportunity, wasn't it? I had a BMX as a kid for about 2 months until it got sold after Christmas, I think, because they needed the money and they were struggling. You know, so yeah, in the children's homes we felt really spoilt, I guess. But obviously I was running away from there, and I was going back to London and seeing Joanne until she ended up in a secure unit, which was the best thing for her. Being 13 at the time and just going on a mad path on the game, things like that. And then during all my times going through London, I ended up in and out of the children's homes, was running off from the children's home, and then they did tell me about my next foster parents in advance. And they said, "We found some foster parents for you. We've been speaking to them about you for a while." And they're really interested in you. They've been reading all your files. They really excited about taking you on, and it sounded really nice. So I went to meet them before I was meant to move in, so I wasn't just dropped on the doorstep like this time. And they're beautiful, and Anne and Ted, my foster home in Aldridge, and it was a real opportunity for me there. And I just wish that by this point I hadn't been so off the rails. I was 13, 14 when I got to Aldridge. So by then, even though I had this opportunity to settle and to have a stable life, I was just so off the rails that I couldn't see what was best for me. So I ended up just running away again back to London. But bless them, they shown some proper unconditional love. They did. They never once said they'd had enough of me, even no matter how many times I ran away to London. And I was living on the streets on Piccadilly and places like that at this point, just roaming around the West End and roaming around London. And I think it just got to a point where, again, I just felt guilty the amount of times I'd ran away from them and what I was putting them through, and I just felt like I didn't want to put them through that anymore, really. So I think that's when I went into Coalpit Lane, which is a children's home in Rugeley. It's not there anymore as well. I think it closed down. A lot of the children's homes that are there now. It was pretty much similar to Cannock. We was getting in the same trouble kind of things we all did. The difference between the trouble we got into while I was living in Cannock and Rugeley was in the children's home before we was all sniffing gas, and I had a bit of a gas problem, all going through, not when I was living on the streets. I never did gas when I was living on the streets, but I was when I was back home in the Midlands and I was at school, I was sniffing gas. In my room at the foster home, I was sniffing gas on the sly. One day my foster brother came in and caught me doing it, doing deodorants basically. But I never did it when I was on the streets of London. I never did the things like when I was in the children's homes, like getting frustrated, and never got arrested when I was living on the streets of London. Because that's what I did notice, is when I was living in the children's homes, I was getting into a lot more trouble with the police. And that's when I first started getting arrested and loads of going to court all the time. And it was mainly just for smashing things up. And I wouldn't say I had reason to, but I think if you look at everything a little bit deep, someone might understand why I might have thought like that a little bit. Because I think when you're living in children's homes, and even though there's some really great staff, sometimes it feels weird, because like you can't just walk out without being reported missing unless you sign out, and things like that. So sometimes you're waiting outside for 3/4 of an hour, just when all the staff are in the office having a meeting, just asking them to sign you out, but you can't sign out yet, or before you can even use the phone, you've got to ask permission, and they're all in the office for 45 minutes talking and things like that. And I think one of the times I got arrested was I'd never really got to camp out with mates and things like that. I never did sleepovers. I never had all that as a kid, And we once or twice, we had one literally in my life before that. But I remember this mate at school saying, "Oh yeah, my mum says come round ours if you want this weekend. We'll have a same weekend." And I thought, "Oh yeah," I felt like a normal kid. So I went back to the children's home and I said, "Oh, my mate says I can stop over this weekend." And the staff said, "Sorry mate, it's going to take about 6 weeks before you can go to any of your mates' houses and things like that." And I just thought, oh, what, 6 weeks from now, it's not the same, is it, Because the parents had to be CRB checked. So that was another one. I didn't want to go up to my mates and say to the parents, "Oh, can you go through a CRB check, please, to the police? Otherwise I'm not allowed to stop over." So that was a bit of a niggle, and that was another reason why I was running away from the children's homes and wanting to be free as well. There was always reasons why I wanted to run away, really, even though I didn't know what there was in my mind. A lot of these red tape rules didn't help, but they've got to be there. It's such a double-edged sword. What do you do if you're a social worker and then you send the kid off to your mate's parents and something horrible happens, So it's such a double-edged sword. It's, I can't really blame social workers or social services for that, because they've also got to protect young people as well. but it helps explain why a lot of young people in care feel how they feel, I guess. And it might not provide any answers, but it just might provide a little bit of insight. So that was me last time in care, really. Even I had some more foster parents before, briefly in Penkridge. I lived in a couple more children's homes for not very long. My main two children's homes were Cannock and Rugeley, but I lived for a short while in one in Tamworth, and I lived one in Lichfield. Did a couple of nights in one in London when they picked me up from, off the streets one day. But yeah, that's just thought I'd let people know a little bit about what it's like in care, really. I'm sure I haven't covered a lot. There's a lot more to cover. If you've got any questions, ask, and I'll try my best to answer them. And check out Poems from a Runaway. It's my true story. I've been a runaway from 10 years old and living on the streets, sleeping rough. Been in London from the age of 12, and all my memoirs and the people I met, and written all through the mind of that young person I was in that day, really. And a lot of funny stories in it as well. It's not all bad news. And yeah, take care. All the best.